Thank you very much. Before I start, I want to mention that this presentation is made with my colleague Wiebe van der Meer, who is also in the room here. I divided the presentation basically in three parts. First, I want to talk about the situation that we have in Groningen regarding Pure, because in Groningen we basically have two institutions that share one Pure instance. So we have the University Medical Center, where I work, and we have the University of Groningen. They collaborate very closely, but they are two separate organizations, so that, that's something we see in Pure. Secondly, I want to look at how we do the research output workflow, so how do we get stuff into Pure? And lastly, how do we monitor data quality? My presentation is purely focused on the research output side of things. So to start with, the situation in Groningen. We have a shared Pure instance, like I said, and we have around 10,000 research outputs per year. You can roughly divide this 40-60 between the medical center and the University of Groningen. And we have two Pure validation teams. So one for each organization. For the university library, if you just look at a validation team, so who puts the data into Pure, who checks the data, that's around 1.9 FTEs. And at the medical library, we have 2.2 FTEs, of people who just look at the data in Pure. Because we are two separate organizations, we used to have separate workflows when it came to research output. And the biggest difference between the two of us were basically that at the university library, I should say, they put the responsibility of filling Pure at a researcher level. So a researcher should go into Pure and fill in their own research output. The library team would then check that to see if the metadata was complete and everything was okay before they would validate that. At the medical library, we decided that we want that responsibility to be at the library side. So at the library, we proactively imported research from researchers to make sure that our Pure is complete. And just to mention here that one of these workflows is not inherently better than the other. It's basically just based on what you want to use the data in Pure for. In Groningen, we started with Pure in 2014. Which was mainly as a source to showcase our research on the portals. And if that is the reason, then it makes sense to have the responsibility at a researcher level, because they can put their research in, they can make their research visible, and thus make their department's research visible. But at a medical center, we needed the research also for reporting issues, yearly reports and analytics. And if that is our goal, we think that the library should be responsible for adding the research into Pure, because we need it for a lot more than just showcasing. I tried to look at the data that we have in Pure, just output created, to see if I could find the difference between the workflows that we have, and I made some interesting graph. At least I found it interesting, so I'm going to share that. We were looking at research output created per year. So we're looking here at the University of Groningen, so everything except the medical faculty. And we can see that around 2017, 18, 19, there was a big increase. And this is a period where we started professionalizing how we work with Pure. We got more people in, we made forms so that researchers could really easily get their research to Pure. We did a lot of communication. So we saw a very steep increase in the amount of research output that came into Pure. Afterwards, you can really see a downwards trend. Just every year, there's just a bit less created. And then 2023, you see a big spike. That is where the university library started taking responsibility and proactively importing research. So you see a really big spike. This is also part of this, is just backlog of publications that were missed in previous years that have now finally been added. And for 2024, I made this graph in September. You can already see that they were almost at the same level as they were in 2022 and previous, so that will probably increase by a lot as well. If we look at the medical center, we see a different graph. It starts out with a steep increase where we got new employees, so more people to work with Pure. And after that, we see mostly an upwards trend up until 2023, where we sadly have some illness in the team, so that's less people working with Pure and thus less research output. So there is a little difference to be seen in the data, but I guess what is most important and most interesting for you right now is just to see how do we work with Pure. So if we look at the workflow that we have, and this is now both for the medical library as for the university library, that researchers can add their research to Pure themselves if they want to, but the library will proactively import from Scopus. And we work now using a Scopus alert and copying result into a Google Sheet, and from there we work with an import module. This will probably raise some questions, so first I want to show you how we work, and afterwards I will show you and explain why we do it like this. So how do we work? We're going to see on the screen on the top right are the Scopus alert that I've set up for at least the University Medical Center. This gives me a new list of publications every week. Those are new in Scopus. And I copy those into a Google Sheet from where our whole team can access that. Well, for us, this has a couple of benefits. Namely, it's much easier to work with multiple people because within this list we can see who is selecting what, so we never import things twice. And I haven't mentioned this, but we import records one by one and not yet automated. Also, using this list, it provides us an overview and we know how much we still need to do. There are still challenges, so I need to manually update this list. And secondly, we cannot keep our whole workflow within Pure. So what we do here is we take a DOI from one of these records, go to the import module, and then from there import the record, validate it completely, and save it. So we know that the data is as highest quality that we can get it. Okay, your question might now be, okay, why this and why not the import module straight away? I have a screenshot of the import module with the same settings. So I put in an affiliation ID and I put in a year, and that gives us a lot of results. And basically, the first thing that is a problem here for us is that I cannot filter here on what has already been imported. So I get a list of everything that the University Medical Center has published this year. But in fact, I only want to see the things that we are missing because those are the ones that we actually need to do something with. Therefore, I cannot get an overview of how much we need to do. And this is not easy to work with multiple people. If you have two people working with the import module, you could say, okay, you start on page 1 and the other one's down to the last page and you work towards the middle. But then if you add a third person, it becomes difficult. Where do they start importing? And if accidentally you import the same record, it kind of becomes like a race. The person that gets the record in first gets the data saved, and the other person gets an error message at the time they press save, and basically they have wasted their time. But this is not my most important reason why we're not using this import module like this. Most importantly for us is that you have that duplicate check in the middle, the red bar, if it's red on the screen, but at least the middle bar, and that doesn't really work like we expect. And let me explain that. So you get 3 options. It's either a yellow bar, a red bar, or no bar. So yellow is it's already impure. You can basically forget about that. You don't need to do anything. You get no bar, which means that it's not impure yet at all, so you need to import that. But you can also get a red bar. So for the yellow bar, you know it's impure. The publication ID is impure. This is done. For the red bar, something happens that at least we don't really like, so to say, is that whenever you have a record in Pure, that is, for example, imported from PubMed, like this, Pure will add a Scopus ID to it, but the import module will not recognize this as already imported because the origin is not Scopus. And in our case, when this came in from PubMed, we have the validation team check the record, update everything in the metadata, so the record is complete. It's how we want it. So whenever we see this record in the import module, we do not want to import it because it won't give us any benefit, but we still see that red bar. You could say, okay, maybe you should just ignore that red bar altogether, but there are some records that are falsely flagged as a duplicate, so those we do actually have to check. So in the workflow, we actually had to check every record and then see, oh, this is already in. So you could skip that and then go to the next one and then see, oh, this is already in, until you finally find one that actually needs to be imported. So this takes a lot of steps, extra clicks, extra work, and that's what we didn't want to. So that's why we went over to the Scopus alert and our Google Sheet method. So very much in short here, we use the Scopus alert to create a list of publications that we need to import. We import them one by one, and whenever they get into Pure, we We check all the metadata, make sure everything is complete, so authors, affiliations, open access status, we add PDFs. The record is very high quality. We do realize that doing this one by one makes it so that we have a very complete Pure and it is high quality, but it also takes a lot of time and people to actually work on it. So in the future, we are looking to hopefully improve this. We're using, for example, the APIs or other methods, but for now, this is how we work. Then let's have a quick look at the data, so you know how we get the data into Pure. Let's see how we check the data, and I've divided this in two parts. First one is that we use the import module in Pure to first create insight into what data we have, so what data is added to Pure, when is it added, who enters data, and we have an open access monitor. So for this we use the report module with data stories. This works really well, so you create a report just once. In the period filter, you can always say last week, last month, last year, something like that. And so you never have to update that. You create it once and you can just check it whenever you want. It works very well. And secondly, we do also checks just to see if we can find mistakes or errors within our Pure instance. And for example, we do that for open access status, for licenses, for DOIs, and for publication status. And just to give you a few examples for that, what we see here is one of the insight pie charts. This just shows us how many research outputs have been added, what types have been added into Pure. And we have a Pure meeting once a month in which we just discuss this briefly. And I only show research output here, but we do this for all of the templates, just to have a quick view of what has been added to Pure in the last month. We also check who adds research output. And yeah, you see Pure IDs here because privacy reasons, I don't want to show you names. But most of the time, this is the library staff that has the most imported research outputs. Sometimes we see researchers are actually very high up, and those researchers are usually going for example, funding opportunities or going for promotions. So they need to have their Pure up to date. And I can see them in this list, and usually not that long afterwards, they come to the library and ask me for research analytics and other things that they need. So usually this gives me a heads up that, okay, somebody is doing something and I can expect them soon. We also have the open access monitor. So we just made a report that shows us how many open access do we have this year. So for this year, we're at 92, 6.5% is still under embargo, and we have 1.4% that is not open access. So this is then also my bridge towards the quality checks. Like we made this report. Our goal is to have 100% open access. And then what we can do now is basically ask ourselves, okay, why haven't we reached 100%? I mean, we're very close, of course, but still there are records that are not open. So we take those records out and just check them. Is there a reason, can we get them open? Of course, in a legal way, or can we find a link that some other university has that publication open in their repository? And if yes, then we add it to Pure just to get closer to that 100% that we want to have. And other quality checks could, for example, be quality checks on the licenses, something that we do twice a year now. The goal that we have in our Pure is that we want to have one type of license per record. There are some exceptions, but the goal in itself is just one type of license per record, and we make a report of that. But we cannot check it directly in the report module, so we export that to Excel, because in Excel we can filter on it. And it would show up like this. Yeah, you can see it. Well, I did this for this year, and for this year we have only 4 records that are actually flagged now that we need to change something. So we see records that have unspecified and Taverne. Taverne is a Dutch license, which probably takes too much time to explain now, but the Dutch people will probably know. You got 2 other records that have CC BY and BY NC, and the last one, Taverne and CC BY, which is just impossible, which is a mistake. These records, yeah, well, our validation teams handle dozens of records every day, so hundreds in a week, and it just makes sense. It's normal that at some point they just misclick somewhere and then save it, and that's no problem at all. But we have these kinds of reports as a backup, so we do these reports now twice a year just to catch those little mistakes that people just make during the work days. The first time we had to do this, of course, the list was a lot longer. But when you cleaned it up the first time, and now we do it twice a year, and you can see that for this year I only have 4, so you can imagine that's not much time to just correct everything. We do the same thing with DOIs. So we want to have one DOI per record, and the DOI needs to start with 10 dots, so not the full doi.org / and then the DOI. Same thing, make a report. We export that to Excel, and then you get the list that shows me, okay, these records have multiple DOIs. Multiple DOIs in Pure can happen whenever you merge records, and the DOIs have different statuses in both versions. Whenever you merge them, Pure just adds them together. Yeah, that's how it can happen with this record. But this way we can at least find them. So go in, remove one of them, and save again. And the other option is to look at just wrong input, so to say. We see a URL is added for the DOI field. And I found the second one interesting because somebody copied the Pure ID. It's exactly the same. Somebody copied the Pure ID, and then when they were adding the DOI, they probably forgot that they still had the Pure ID copied, so they copied that in and saved it. So, yeah, well, of course that won't work. So with this report, we found that and just correct that. The last quality check that I want to show you here is the quality check that we do on publication status. So we have a lot of accepted in press and EPUB ahead of print in our Pure. So when will that actually go to published? For this, we now use Scival. We take the publications in Pure that are accepted or EPUB and export them to Scival, and then from Scival we export the publication stage final, and then we go back into Pure and change that. We do know, and you are probably thinking, available updates in Pure, because available updates is a feature in Pure that should help us with this. I don't know if everyone knows what available updates are, but in fact they check your Pure to see if the data in your Pure is the same as, for example, in Scopus, and if there is a change, it will give you an available update. I understand that in theory this feature would help us greatly. Sadly, we just cannot get it to work yet. We have tried this on 4 separate occasions to check all of the settings, and for us we decided to turn it off again, basically mainly because our validation teams asked us to. So this is also for the Elsevier people here. We are very open for suggestions and help to get this up and running because we think that would actually help us. And on my last slide, I talked about how we get the data in Pure, so we're very much complete. And I talked about how we check the data a couple of times a year, so the quality is also very high. Then what do we use the data for? And this is just, of course, just very brief. The first thing that we do is we use it for a lot of publication lists. So our departments need to make yearly reports. They need to know what have they done, published this last year. Well, we can get that out of Pure very quickly. We use it for the CVs for the researchers. We use it for profile pages of the researchers, both on the medical center website and on the university website. We need it for national reporting. So there is a Dutch national open access monitoring, which we use our Pure data for. And we need to give figures about our publications and activities and other types in Pure towards Dutch government every year. And that also comes from our Pure. And lastly, we use Pure a lot for our research analytics. So when doing a research analytics analysis or bibliometric analysis on a department, then basically Pure is our only source of a validated set of publications from that department that we can use within those analysis. And that's why we need Pure up to date, because if it's not in Pure, we don't use it for an analysis or something, and yeah, we can really miss things. And with that, that was my last slide, so thank you very much for your attention. If you have... I love sharing my experience with this, so if you have any questions, just come talk to me here or send me an email later.
Thank you very much, Robin. We have time for a couple of questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Meer Uiterwijk from Maastricht University. I was wondering about the open access monitor. You said you registered that in Pure. What do you register? You register the kind of open access, like diamond, gold, or hybrid, or only the status of
only
the
status.
DOI?
Only the status.
Only the status.
Yeah.
Okay, and you get that from what database?
The status it is either from the publication itself, but we also use on paywall and UKbasis to get all the information.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So that was fabulous, and I'm inspired by your open access because I just ran ours and we're at like 16%, so I can go work on that, those people. Do you have a ticket in for the import filter to filter out what's already been imported? Because that is a huge issue and would solve a lot of people's problem if you have a ticket for it.
We made a ticket, but that was probably already years ago.
Okay.
But no recent ticket.
Yeah,
takers.
we need that ticket back because we do a lot of manual importing. But also, I was going to say, we use the 4-step workflow, so where you augment your records. So the ones that are put in by our staff get approved, and they go right out, and then the validator goes in and adds the other information. You just have 3-step or 4-step?
Let's see, our researchers can put in the research themselves, so they add the publication to Pure, and then the validation team just goes through the record, and whenever it's done, they save it. So I guess that's only 2 steps.